the Starship Blackraven. This is a resin miniature. It's a little big to be called a miniature. From Coruscant Miniatures. It was sent to the channel by superfan Dart Mart. Thank him down in the comments, who's been after me. Hey, I sent you this great miniature. You painted it great. It hasn't made an appearance on the table. But The Adventures of the Blackraven is a very loose narrative campaign starring the captain of the starship, Cobalt 15. His, I don't want to call him sidekick. I think these two had like an enemy mine thing going. Cobalt was a war bot who got tired of fighting wars all the time for rich banking interests. So he bought his own, he took out a loan, he bought his own starship, and he still owes a lot of money, not just to the banks, but also to the gangsters. I mean, how can you tell the difference? So we use that as the framework for a series of ongoing campaigns. Of course, he is a lovable rogue with a soft spot for this little guy down here. The Magic Space Baby. Did I mention this fellow's name is Lieutenant Dane? That's going to be kind of important later. And then most recently, they did pick up who I tend to think of as the real sidekick. This is Monk E, a little robo-monkey pet. And for the record, Alternative Armies, Coruscant, and a unique figure hand-carved by the same guy that sent me this spaceship. We started off the campaign using the campaign setup tables from 5 Parsecs from Home, 2nd edition, and the tabletop skirmish rules for Void Pirates. We played like 5 or 6 games, had a good time, and said, hey, let's see how these guys handle it. And it wasn't these guys. We've lost a few crew members due to attrition. We've gained a couple of more. Let's see how it works with Planet 28. And Planet 28 was fine. It's okay. It just didn't blow my skirt up, so we moved on from that pretty quick. We tried 5 Parsecs from Home, 2nd edition. The tabletop skirmish battle was complete meh. It's put me off 3rd edition. For those of you that are wondering, well, why don't you just use 5 Parsecs from Home? It's designed for this. Yeah, I know. I wasn't impressed with it. We tried Galactic Heroes, which is a tremendous amount of fun. I highly recommend it. But this game really shines with 2-player. There's a lot of hidden information, hidden movements, a lot of great scenarios in it. Highly recommend this, but it's not really well suited for solo gaming. We may return to one of the other Fistful of Lead titles later on. So the question then becomes, well, now we have a new, and I should point out before we get on to this current situation, the current season, every season we start over. I think we're on season 5, it'll say on the title card. And we rebuild all of our characteristics, all of our profiles, kind of using what came before, but kind of starting over at level 1 because we're starting a new rule set. And you don't want to start a rule set with all the bells and whistles. You got to kind of ease in to that ice cold water, right? But then you let the water warm up gradually as you add skills and stuff. So that's what we're going to do today. The question then becomes, what is a good sci-fi skirmish scenario rule set that you can use that will do this for you? And the answer is, man, there's a lot of them. Like, you guys are probably going to have a lot of really good recommendations. Oh, you should do Horizon Dawn, Zero Dark, or Dark Horizon, what is it? Zero Dawn? Dark Horizon? I don't remember what it's called. Looks really fascinating. It's only available through Wargame Vault. And I'm not a huge fan of the one bookshelf system, of which Wargame Vault is a kind. Their management is really sketchy. Anyway, so what rule set are we going to use? Well, some of you have probably seen the YouTube short where I teased it a little bit. And some of you will probably, oh, there's the name right there. You probably recognize this what do you call it? Quick reference sheet? But for those of you that don't, hey, look at that. It's Necromunda. This is written by Andy Chambers. It's, oh man, it's older than my kids. I think it dates back to somewhere around like 1992, 94-ish, somewhere in there. And this game is built on the Warhammer 40K 2nd edition tabletop engine. This is a very tightly constructed campaign game in which war bands of gangs, see, this is one giant city. This is the Spire Necromunda. And gangs fight over territory and reputation and money and girls, except for the girls who maybe they do fight over girls because they look like that kind of girl. The campaign rules are very tightly integrated with the tabletop rules. We are going to use whatever we want from Necromunda, and we are going to throw away the rest. We're kind of going to use now, and so we should probably go through like all of the intentions. But first, let's talk a little bit about how the tabletop game is played. But before we get into the rules, I want to talk a little bit about how these rules are presented. You will notice that I'm very early in the game. We've got a page of introductions, and then bang, we're already into here's what your character profiles look like. The very next page is what the turn is, what the phases are. This is very different from the more modern rule sets, the kind of Rule of Carnage, Ash Barker, Their way of running, we did some Rogue Stars. That was one of the seasons we did. But Rogue Stars is a little too high a cognitive load. We only played like 4 or 5 games of this because one warband is about all you can handle mentally. I mean, unless you've got like a 160 IQ, and brother, I'm halfway there. A little too much to run 2 full crews double-fisted in Rogue Stars. Great game, kind of an RPG light. But the reason I pulled this out was not just to jog my memory, but to show you, look, when they do introduce the game, yeah, you've got your introduction, then they immediately jump into, here's the equipment you need, here's the, this one's not, there's the game, and then they go, wow, I picked the wrong game. Thanks, Osprey. I'm trying to show people something. All right, let's try Dragon Rampant. Dragon Rampant gives you the introduction, and then it immediately jumps into, here's how you build your warband. The idea being, as I enter this game, what are the steps that I will go through to get to the table? Well, first I need to get my pieces. Then I can put the battle rules together. Then I can add the fantastic, then I can worry about scenarios, and maybe even some of the games they'll put a campaign system at the very end. Right, that's kind of the more modern way of introducing a rule set. And it works reasonably well, particularly for people that are not well-versed in miniature war games. Rogue Stars breaks the mold a little bit by saying, yeah, look, here's the stuff you need at least, which is great to have right off the bat, but then they dive you right into the rules, and that's what happens here. And that's how we're going to go through this particular introductory video, right? So we've got our characteristic profile, and our regular guys are going to have a movement 4 inches, weapon skill. When it comes to movement, the game is designed for warbands of anywhere from, depending on which supplement you're using, 5 to maybe 15 figures. It's designed for a 4x4 table. My table is 2 by about 2.5. I'm only going to be running a half-size crew. It's going to be 4 versus warbands of 3 to 6. So I'm comfortable leaving all of my measurements in inches. It's a half a size of a normal table, but that's because I got half the number of figures. Then you've got weapon skill is melee, ballistic skill is shooting, strength, toughness, how many wounds do you got, what's your initiative? This is kind of like dexterity. It's kind of a catch-all for any time you need to make a saving throw. How many attacks you got and what's your leadership? In this game, you basically have a couple of different statuses. Lieutenant Dane is fine. He's running around. He's having fun. He gets shot. Dump him on his face. Then you're going to make a wound check, and there's one of 2 possibilities. He's either wounded, in which case all he can do is crawl to cover and try again next turn. Or he can become pinned. You turn him face up, and now he can't really do anything. He has to spend his whole turn. Basically, it's skip a turn to stand up. And I think there may be some subtle rules about, once you stand up, you can move like 2 inches or run to cover. But that's all you can do. If you're close to a leader and you're pinned, you can make a leadership check, and that's where this leadership comes in. Using your leader's ability, you stand up at the start of your turn, you can do your full action. Okay? And then maybe there's a chance that you are wounded, and it's called a flesh wound. And if you have a flesh wound, your melee and shooting skills go down by 1. Once those are reduced to 0, you're out of the game. So that's really kind of the 4th status, is just out of the game. Then we kick on over to the campaign rules. And this is part of the reason I'm walking you through this process. We will be using the serious injuries chart. Any figure that is down or has been eliminated from the table has to roll on this chart. And as you can see, he survives against the odds, pretty rare. Or if you roll a 1, it's a D66 roll. And there's basically a 1 in 6 chance that he's just dead. Our boss man could die. If he's knocked off the table, there's a 1 in 6 chance he dies, and we'll probably promote Lieutenant Dane to the new captain and have to recruit some new figures. Any of these that apply will apply for the rest of the campaign. As far as the game itself is concerned, it's an I-go-you-go system. I know some people really get all clenched up about the name I-go-you-go because every game is an I-go-you-go system. See, look, if I move 1 figure and then you move 1 figure, I go and you go. I'm using giant flies. We may see giant flies on the table. And then if I move another figure, see, I go and you go. Well, okay, right. Time is linear and we can only focus on one action at a time. So we take turns, and the only question is, how are we taking turns activating our models? Technically, every game is an I-go-you-go system. But we all know that the phrase came to mean one side does all his stuff, and then the other side does all his stuff. It's just a side-by-side activation. The word isn't entirely accurate, but we speak this language called English. That kind of thing happens all the time. It's fine. Unclench, okay? We know it's I go all my stuff, you go all my stuff. We just don't say the all my stuff because that takes a long time. And I go, you go is already kind of a mouthful, ain't it? The turn is pretty simple. Everybody moves, everybody shoots. If you have moved into contact during the movement phase, you charge into melee, then you'll skip the shooting and you go straight to hand-to-hand combat, and then we do recovery. This is where we try to escape the pins, and you get it. Anybody that's broken and running away has a chance to not be broken and not be running away. There are rules for things like Overwatch, which allow you to take a shot in your opposing player's turn. If one of his figures moves across your line of sight, you take a shot, basically at -1. But I want to talk about the profiles now for our crew. Everybody moves 4 inches. Remember, Cobalt is a little bit slow, but he has super bionic legs. That was one of the improvements we got before. We are going to give him the same stat line as a leader. In Necromunda, there's 4 kinds of figures. There's leaders, you only get 1 of those. There's heavy weapon specialists, you get like 1 or 2 of those if you got the points. You've got regular gangers, and then you've got pukes, little juves that don't have any experience, and they're really kind of useless. So what I've done is I've given Cobalt 15 the leader profile, as though this was a starting gang. He does have carapace armor, because he's not starting. And also, he's a giant war bot. Problem with the carapace armor is it gives him a 4-up save whenever he's wounded. Roll a d6, and on a 4-up, he doesn't take the wound after all. But that does reduce his initiative down to 2. So if he needs to stay away from any ledges, because he's likely to fall off and go boom. I did give him dual auto pistols, so he's going to be pretty good at hand-to-hand combat, because you can use pistols in combat. And then he's got flugs, which is, in the Necromunda rules, it's filter plugs. Basically, it makes you immune to any toxic gas or toxic atmospheres. So that's pretty easy, right? And then he's got the highest leadership. Most of these are like D6 rolls. The leadership is a 2D6 roll understat, so you want high numbers. And the interesting thing about Warhammer 40K is that they said, look, all your profiles, you want high numbers. All right, and what that does is it means sometimes you want to roll over, sometimes you want to roll under, but at least when you look at a profile, as these numbers go up, you get better. Lieutenant Dane started out as a sniper. He's really good at melee combat, so what I did is I said, yeah, let's take that into consideration. You know what? We can do that right now. We're going to give him an increase in his weapon skill of 4. Now, he is a sniper, so what we're going to do is I gave him an auto gun with a scope. And that 360 no scope means, we'll take a look at the weapon profiles now. Normally an auto gun, when you shoot up to 12 inches, you get a +1. And then from 12 to 24, you don't get any bonus to hit. Well, that scope means that he gets a +1 whether he's shooting at short range or long range. Hey, he's a sniper. And then we don't have to worry about the rest of this, whether strength, damage. Basically, you take your strength and your toughness, the differential, and then that's either you're wounded on a 4-up, but if the difference is 1, then that may become a 5 or a 3. It'll make a lot more sense once we actually start playing the game. The trick with Lieutenant Dane is, because he was trained in the military as a sniper, I'm going to give him 1 starting shooting skill, and I wanted to roll that die here in this episode so you can see, this is the kind of thing. I don't really care what his shooting skill is. I just want him to be really good. If it's a 3 gunfighter, that's for like 2 pistols, I may re-roll. And with 6 rapid fire, if he does not move, he can shoot twice. Hey, that's pretty cool. So that'll work out really well for him. Rapid fire, and I'm just going to put a little sketch there. 2x for shooting twice if he does not move. Then we get to the interesting one, and that's our little space buddy, the Magic Space Baby. He is tiny. What does that mean? Well, for starters, we used the Juve profile. He's only got a weapon skill and a ballistic skill of 2. He is not great at fighting. His initiative is, and he's not even very brave, right? But he is a telepath. The core rules for Necromunda did not include psychers, to use the jargon for 40K. There was one official, I should say the first, there were a bunch of official supplements, but the first one was called Outlanders, and it introduced wandering psychers. And in the 40K universe, when you use magic, what you're really doing is calling on the powers of the warp, and you have demons give you special abilities. Well, that doesn't make sense in our kind of more Traveler-esque. Well, okay, so he's psionic, which is really just, he's a wizard in a lab coat. That makes it hard science fiction. Spoiler alert, science fiction is just a subgenre of fantasy. We got a psionicist for crying out loud. But I don't want to have to deal with like demons sucking people into the warp or misfire, so we're going to kind of ignore all of that. And this is where some of you guys will start twitching. Well, it's not rules as written. Yep, that's right. I do what I want. I'm cool. Like, listen, if you're gaming at an elite level, you can do that. Do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Point being, I went to that Outlanders, and I said, what powers would make sense for the Magic Space Baby, given that, he's kind of a peaceful chap. And what I came up with was these 3. He gets 1 major power, which is hallucinations. Anybody within 24 inches does not require line of sight. For a 2-inch radius, they basically get hit by a easy for me to say, a hallucinogen gas bomb. And so I just put the reference there for 59 because it does get a little bit complicated. I can kind of show you. All right, page 46. You roll a d6. If they fail to resist, then you roll a d6, and this is what the result is. Traitors, the victim becomes convinced his fellow fighters are out to get him. The only way to escape is kill them all. He shoots his nearest friend. They're crawling all over me. He's convinced spiders are. He cannot test to avoid this. He's basically pinned. Okay, so we don't know what the result is going to be. Run for it. He may run away. We don't know what the result is going to be, but we do know that it will upset the plans of our enemies. He also has heal. If he is in contact, he can heal all the flesh wounds from a friend. Now, there's a special ability that allows you to, if you stand next to and touch an ally who is down, he can stand up immediately. That's not what this is. It's only if our friend has stood up and has the flesh wounds, so he's got the minus to his melee and shooting skills, those go bye-bye. Then he also has displace. And any friend, he can basically it's teleportation, right? Hey, you can teleport 3d6 inches in any direction. It does allow you to get into melee contact. So that's his abilities, and that's really all he's got. He's not a fighter. He's unarmed. He can't shoot. He's just going to be dropping hallucinations on people and then teleporting to escape to danger. We may use the Magic Space Baby to fulfill objectives. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the last thing we got to talk about is Monk E. He's got a weapon skill of 4. He's a fighter. He has a plasma pistol. However, now in our last battle, we decided using the rules for... I threw it behind me too far. Let me reach back. There we go. Okay. For Galactic Heroes, we gave him basically stun bombs. It's like a shocker that it stuns anybody within like 2 inches of him. We don't have anything like that in Necromunda, so we're just going to give him kind of he's a robot, right? He's going to have like some kind of built-in weaponry. In addition to his claws, that's where we get the weapon skill from. He does have, what does he have? He has a plasma pistol. He can sprint, this is one of the skills we gave him, and he can leap, right? He's a monkey, so he gets to move an extra, what is this, 12-inch? Oh, if all he does is move, he can move 12-inch. Oh, to charge into combat. That's what it is. If he's moving into combat, he can charge 12 inches, not just the 8. It's 3 times your move score. So if you move 4 inches. If you run 8. And if you charge 8. Except for Monk E, he charges 12 inches. If his movement skill goes up during the course of the campaign and becomes 5, he'll be able to sprint a whopping 15 inches, which is pretty impressive. And then we gave him leap because, hey, monkeys are good at jumping, right? You can leap d6 inches during your turn, so he's going to be pretty quick. The last thing we should talk about is the scenario table. Now, when you play a game of Necromunda, one of the benefits that you can get with time and experience is having a little more control over the selection of which scenario is played. Some gangs are really good at getting close up, face to face. Some gangs are good at hanging back and shooting. Some gangs are good at blowing stuff up. So this becomes very important, which scenario you choose. We are playing a narrative campaign double-fisted. We're not going to use any of these scenarios. Well, we might use some of these scenarios, but for example, our first scenario we're going to use is the shootout. We're not going to use the narrative that's presented here. Fighters from 2 rival gangs. Well, we don't really have rival gangs. We have a starship crew. He's just an honest businessman trying to make a buck, right? So, the gang narrative doesn't work, but look, we all know that these scenarios have a limited number of ways that they run. There's loot and scoot, there's get across the table, there's just straight up fight. Some of these are a little more sophisticated. The shootout is where you kind of walk towards each other and you're trying to hold your nerve, and that's what we're going to start off with our first scenario. I'm not going to go into too much detail today because I'm just introducing the campaign structure, but we're not going to be using any of that, and that means that some of our advances that we roll on our experience chart are going to be worthless to us. It also means that we need a source of some new scenarios. So we will be using some of these John Lambshead sci-fi skirmish scenarios. However, this book is written from the perspective of a kind of kitchen sink science fiction world or setting that's like I said, it's a kitchen sink. You've got rival corporations, you've got gangs running out in the wastelands, you've got security personnel, you've got cultists running around. I looked through and I didn't find anything that's specifically designed for this kind of setting where you've got a starship crew that just, keeps getting betrayed or has a patron or is trying to do stuff. So we may pull out a couple of these because I want to show you, how cool some of these are and how different they are and how they can be used to supplement a game like Necromunda. So that's what to expect from this new season of The Adventures of the Blackraven, Cobalt 15, Lieutenant Dane, and company. And I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions before we get started, by the time this goes live, I'll already have recorded 1 or 2 scenarios and, have those scheduled. But by all means, any suggestions, any comments, let me know. I do think this is one of the better skirmish wargame rule sets if you can carve out the stuff that doesn't apply to you. Necromunda 2nd edition Warhammer 40k earned a reputation as Hero Hammer. It really, the 40k base game became all about the big dang heroes, and it became really more of a skirmish game in its own right. And it suffered from the power creep. But the core system works really well, and I think that you'll see this as we go. And, interestingly enough, there is, where is it? Look, Rick Priestley's name is on this book, and Rick Priestley's name is on this book. It's Rick Priestley's hobby, man. We're all just visiting. So I think you'll see, and even though this is a 30-year-old system, I think it's really robust. I think it's a great, smooth system, and the campaign had a few flaws. A couple of the factions had bonuses in the campaign system that meant that they incrementally got better over time. Some of the people suffered, for example, the melee fighters. My favorite guys, the lunkheads, the big, strong melee types. Shooting is a little bit overpowered. That, the idea is, well, yeah, you can shoot me at a distance, but if I get close to you, then I'm just going to tear you apart, tear you to pieces. But it was really hard to get close to people because the game demands a whole lot of scatter terrain. And so what we found is that some factions were really weak. And the other frustrating thing is one of the factions, just to kind of close out the little stroll down the Necromunda memory lane, one of the factions in the Outlanders supplement was these rich kids that had like superpower suits. So they had like these like hulking like Irby style battle mech suits. I mean, individual sized, but there were little hulks, or one of the guys was basically like predator aliens. They were really expensive because they were really good. I was a prime killer of those guys. The people that played that game, they were called Spirers, and the people that played that system, those factions were bad people in my experience. Like, they wanted to win. They were the cool guys that would spend all the money on the bestest, hottest, coolest models. And then I would kill one of them. And so they would take an immediate 20% hit to their force. And rather than play the game out and say, yeah, wow, I really took it on the chin that time, this is going to be a challenge, they would just take their roster, they'd wad it up, throw it away, and go, here's my new roster, it's exactly the same as before. And I'd be like, bro, you just gave yourself a 200-point bonus. You killed 2 of my gangers. I'm down 10%. You don't see me beefing about it. So it's a game that really does rely on the good nature of the people that you're competing with and against. And we had a lot of fun. I mean, we had, when I was in college, we had a bulletin board where we would post trash talk, and we had a weekly kind of results. I ran it as the president of the Games Club, and I said, send me your results. I'll type up little news articles and news stories, and if you have any rumors you want to spread around. One of the guys became enforcers for the local law enforcement, and they got little bonuses for that. One of the guys was outlawed, and he spent all his time complaining because the bounty on his head was too low, and all of the missions that he would select were designed to destroy the other people's property. He was basically just a bunch of arsonists. And he would threaten people in the rumors, and then he would attack them and fulfill. It was a whole lot of fun. So we're going to try to kind of recapture those glory days of college playing Necromunda on the tabletop. And I am really glad to have you guys along, because I know some of you guys know a heck of a lot more about Necromunda, the OG Oldhammer style Necromunda, than I do. And I want to hear about your trips down memory lane. I want to hear what kind of fun you had. What was the gang that you enjoyed? Oh, by the way, my Goliaths, I always cut the mohawks off. I thought those were dumb. My guys ran around bald-headed. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. I'm praying for you.